My name is Andrew Myers. I'm presenting here with Sam Gibbs today. We wanted to kind of have a follow-up from our talk last year around managing Macs with Intune and discuss more about mastering Macs with Intune. We work with Electrona, an IT service provider, and a lot of times we work with outside organizations who are moving MDMs or trying to set up MDMs for the first time, and Intune seems to be the most prevalent thing again and again and again. So again, the past few years, it's just been one contact after another looking to implement Intune and how to do it right for managing Macs as opposed to a Windows side. So we're going to kind of cover some of the things that we've found and hopefully help others out who are maybe running into the same issues or want to find out more about Intune itself. The first thing we want to kick off with, we discussed this last year, was the speed of Intune. It does have a few shortcomings with that in terms of when you can expect things to take action on the endpoint, when it will report within the console, and just general anything to do with Intune and the speed in which it works. However, we now have Speed 2. Intune has introduced several new changes and actions that will actually trigger updates on the endpoint, actions being anything from assigning changes within a configuration profile. It will then redistribute it at a much quicker rate. Configuration profile payload changes, any Entra group membership changes. So as long as your Entra ID and Entra group organization is there and in place well, anytime membership changes happen on the back end of that, it'll also determine changes for the configuration profiles and push those back at that time. The last is the VPP App Store app version determination. As to why that wasn't actually happening before, I'm not sure, but at least now, like when a VPP app updates a version number, Intune will attempt to redistribute that app back to it. Additionally, one thing that's not really shown from an admin perspective, but it's also more on the resources side. Resources that were reported in Intune previously only updated about once a week, and that's where a lot of people notice speed changes or speed references to see when they distributed an app, the app version for the resource for the device itself wouldn't actually update for potentially a week, and that is improving up to every 8 hours now for any kind of changes like that to report for the devices. So let's talk more about what Intune does well.
Yeah. So Intune probably gets a lot of flack in the community, just probably with the branding of Microsoft or the performance of the platform. But as like Andrew mentioned, we've worked a lot with Intune in the past year or two, and we've come to admire some of the aspects of Intune, and we really want to highlight a few of the things that Intune does really well. So getting into it, I think the most obvious thing is this tight integration with the Microsoft ecosystem. Obviously, it's something Microsoft can take advantage of, but a lot of MDMs are not also IDPs. So Microsoft has their built-in integration with Entra that allows you to easily assign Macs to the end user, assign policies, configuration profiles, apps directly to user groups or departments inside of Entra if you have that built out on the Entra side. Hand in hand with that, you can also deploy Office apps pretty easily through Intune platform. There's some pros and cons to that approach, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but that's just something that you can go into Intune and quickly deploy out your Office apps. One of those Office apps, or I should say Microsoft apps, is Microsoft Defender, but not only can you deploy Defender easily through Intune, but you have a really tight integration into the Defender console itself, and that all comes kind of full circle with conditional access. So you take all these aspects, your MDM, your IDP, your security tools, and you can really secure and control access to your company's resources with Intune. Another thing Intune does really well is configuration profiles. So we talked about this a little bit last year, but a few years ago, Apple started publishing all their MDM and DDM schemas to GitHub. So when there's new OS versions for all their OS platforms, there's macOS, iOS, tvOS. Those are all published onto GitHub. Microsoft developed a workflow where they're watching all those changes and importing them directly into Intune. So you don't have to wait for a new version of the tool. You don't have to wait for a new version of Intune. As soon as there's a new update for payload on the Apple side, it comes into Intune. It lets you play around with those changes right away and test them out before you deploy them out to your users. I just thought this was a fun little graph to show. You can see the spikes of when Apple's made changes to this repo. Usually it's between the fall and the spring release seasons. So what does this look like on the Intune side? So they have what's called the settings picker. I think there's a little over 400 payloads that you can sort through. So you can easily browse through them or search for them. And then you can easily toggle them on and off inside your actual configuration profile. One thing that we also really like is the DDM, which is becoming more and more prevalent, is nested inside alongside all the MDM traditional controls. You don't have to go to one place to manage your DDM stuff and another place to manage your MDM. So let's take a look at this in action. So we're going to go through a quick demo, just searching for some payloads. Here we're looking for software. We're going to see all the categories that are applicable to software updates. We can choose through here. We can look at the different options there. As we check boxes in the background, you'll see them getting added to your configuration profile. You can close the settings picker and come back to it later and add more things over time. You don't have to check every single top-level box. You can check sub-boxes. So you can really kind of customize and fine-grain exactly what's going on to your configuration profile. Then on the configuration profile itself, you can remove things if you don't actually want them. And if you do remove them, there's a little undo button to undo that change. You can also go through, choose things from your drop-down box. You have toggles. You have text boxes that you can type into. It's all very configurable. All the little payloads have a little eye next to them that tells you exactly what the key is doing. A lot of this is coming, again, from that schema data that Apple supplies. So it's not like Microsoft is really changing what that content of that description of the payload is. Yeah, it's just very intuitive, it's customizable, it's pretty powerful, and we really like it. Another thing that Intune does really well is the Graph API. This is, in a technical term, a RESTful web API, and it allows you to access all of Microsoft's cloud service resources. So when you think about it, Microsoft can do a lot of things, obviously. It has your IDP, you have things like Teams, you have your Outlook, all of that, and you can leverage all of that and use that with the Graph API. So they have a great resource on GitHub where they have code samples for the Graph API that are just for Intune. A lot of these are just honestly really short one-liner commands. So you can take those and run PowerShell on your Mac, authenticate to the API, and run those commands directly and to see what they do. But you can do a lot of things with that. You can, grab your configuration profiles. You can create new ones. You can create scripts. You can upload and automate uploading packages. You can get token alerts. And if you find the reporting on Intune a little bit lacking, you can create your own reporting through those API mechanisms. There are a ton of community tools that use the Graph API. We just want to highlight a couple of them that are really impressive. One is Intune CD. We talked about this last year. This is a great open source tool that allows you to not only download and back up your Intune instance, so to speak, and replicate that, but you can also take it and export it to another Intune tenant. And then there's also Intunomator. That's a newer one to the scene, but it is kind of what it sounds like. Somebody took Installamator, which is a great open source tool for patching your third-party apps on your Mac and combining it and facilitating leveraging that inside of Intune. Another thing that we love as IT is BYOD. So maybe not a lot of folks in this room deal with BYOD, but again, as we've worked in the past year with a lot of mid to large size enterprises, that is really a big concern for them. They want to be able to control and manage what people are accessing on their personal devices in terms of their company's resources. So Intune does a great job with this. You have one option with BYOD where you can take the personal device, it doesn't matter if it's a Mac, if it's an iPhone, Android phone, you can enroll it into Intune. And they make this really simple. All you have to do is download the company portal app and sign in with your credentials. Doesn't matter what other platform it is. It's the same process. It makes it simple for the end user. It makes it simple for your service desk. If you don't want to fully manage the device, you can also leverage MAM. That's a mobile application management framework. And the concept here, alongside with the app protection policies, is that you're managing the app itself. So if, for example, you have Teams, and somebody takes Teams and installs it on a personal device, after they log in with their company credentials, it's managed and controlled by you, determining how you set up your policies. So again, it's just taking this concept of you have your company resources that you want to protect and allow folks to use them on their personal devices, but you want to ensure that company data is secured as well. A couple of small things that Intune does well is focusing on user empowerment. So we like to empower our end users, and they have the company portal app, which acts as a self-service vehicle for installing apps. But you can also do other things inside of there, including looking at your compliance settings and also being able to access your recovery key. So again, it's a small thing, but I'm sure everyone in this room has been on some kind of call at some point where users locked out of their Mac. They need to look up their recovery key, and you have to send that to them. With Intune, you can either get to your recovery key for your Mac through the company portal app on the Mac itself, or on your phone, or on a web browser, just by logging in and looking at it. Another thing that is actually a new thing in the last year, since we talked last year, is they have remote help functionality. This is both a web-based or an app-based tool. It is a paid product, so you have to pay for that an additional license, and it's not included in the standard Intune package. You can do, I think it's like a 6-month trial, but this allows you to remote into your end users, either your managed Macs or even their personal devices. So it works well, and if you're curious, there's a demo you can walk through, and kind of it's a guided demo. Lastly, we want to talk about things that are important, but for, I would say, the VIPs. Maybe we don't like these things so much, but the people who are the decision makers really take a look at this. So Intune is the one pane of glass to rule them all. You have one platform where you can manage your PCs, your iOS devices, your Android, your macOS, and they, on the Microsoft's roadmap, they're coming and adding TV and Vision OS support later this year. Again, as IT folks, maybe we don't like this. Having the same UI, the same framework, trying to manage Windows and Macs together in the same portal isn't always the greatest approach. But for folks who are the CIOs of the world, they like having everything inside that one platform. Hand in hand, they also like privileged access control. So this is something where Intune is kind of a step above the rest in terms of MDMs, where you can, again, this is something that maybe we don't like. You have to fight through all the red tape. You have to have a break glass account. You have to elevate your account, maybe even to read changes, not even just to make changes. But it's this approach of it's more enterprisey, I should say. Before you go in and deploy something out to all of your Macs, you have to jump through these hoops. In the last few months, they've added a feature where you need 2 people to approve the change. So again, more red tape, but something that the enterprise folks of the world really approve of.
It's not a requirement, but
No.
the security folks really love to configure it because they think it's more secure and they can log everything.
Yeah. So yeah, just to round this all up, Intune is just a platform that's growing. It's improving. We like a lot of the aspects, and it's really being driven and looked at in the enterprise more and more.
So we talked about what Intune does well. We'd like to kind of cover some of the things that Intune needs help with. This could be from third-party tools or just better understanding the environment with which you're managing the devices in. The first thing we wanted to look at, and kind of 4 things to cover overall, would be enrollment. This is the process in which the user actually gets the device, unboxes the Mac, and is ready to use it from the get-go. App management, this is app distribution and app patching. App restrictions, as well as the reporting, which is provided to an admin within Intune. So again, we'll look at enrollment first, and this is just a recording we have. This is an automated device enrollment. This is using modern authentication with user affinity. So what we'll see here, did you hit play for me?
I did.
Thank you. What we'll see here is what a current enrollment is like on macOS Sequoia. You'll get your language and country selection, any kind of accessibility features, the great currently unavoidable migrate Mac data. You'll log into wireless, and here you'll be prompted with your MDM enrollment. We are using, again, modern authentication with user affinity, so this is actually going to prompt the user for their Microsoft credentials. They'll have to sign in. They'll be prompted for MFA as well, so we want to make sure the user who's setting this device up is who they say they are. So here, through horrible movie management, I let it sit way too long, and we'll actually sign into the device. We'll get prompted for MFA. And yeah, should have fast forwarded so much more. There's a lot of fast forwarding here, but not here, unfortunately. Boom, finally, we're signed in. This process, we did have await config enabled within Intune. So what will happen here for remote management, while it is fast forwarded through a lot of movie magic, we're actually ensuring all the configuration profiles that are required to be installed are laid down on the device, as well as any line of business apps that are set as required are being installed at this point as well. So again, we're doing user affinity, so we've already pre-populated the information of the user's full name and account name based on Entra attributes. I, for some reason, have a requirement to always set Earth as my profile picture. The password that's set here, since we have a password policy configuration profile, it does have to meet those minimum requirements. Down the road, kind of what we'll show is also a passwordless platform SSO setup for where the local password is managed separately and everything else is used through biometric authentication. So where we'll enable location services, we configured File Vault to enable during Setup Assistant. And again, since we're doing passwordless authentication, we're going to require and have the user go ahead and set up Touch ID here. So this looks pretty much like what every other enrollment would be. And now we're at the desktop. So this is the first time I've got a Mac. Maybe I haven't used one, maybe I have, but I'm not really sure if this is done. Like, is this ready for me? This looks like Apple's standard dock. There's a few icons up in the menu bar that look a little different, but again, I've not really used the Mac before. I don't know if I should click on them or use them. For me, if I'm a first-time Mac user or even use one personally, I don't know if this is really configured and set up for me to use as an enterprise device. So we'll kind of sit here and look. We'll wait a few minutes. Maybe the script, maybe something took a while to kick off.
Where is my Outlook?
Where's my Teams? I need to get to Teams so I can message IT. But again, this is the first time using a Mac. How do I get to my applications? Here's this little funny icon down at the bottom. Maybe I could look at it, but I'm not really sure. So with here, we'll get in a second, and we'll actually look in Launchpad. And here, everything looks default. We can swipe over to the right and see, okay, some apps have been installed. This is how Intune interacts out of the box without an enrollment experience. So again, from an end user perspective, it's not really apparent to me that this device is ready to use. It's a corporate type device, and I don't really know how to access Outlook and Teams because that's pretty much all I function with. So what we kind of want to go through next is more of what an actual good enrollment experience needs and how we kind of meet those and implement it within Intune itself.
All right, cool. So we made this slightly short checklist of what we consider like what a good enrollment experience needs, and this is more focused after you get to the desktop, everything that we can control from that point forward. So let's go through another recording. We'll pick up where the user account is being created, and you'll see, just like with Andrew, it's the same configuration. The user with authentication with modern authentication locked in our profile. We have the same configuration profiles to be pushed down. We also have to do Touch ID. But when we get to the desktop, after Touch ID, which we got really good at setting up, you'll get.
That's not fast forwarded. That's real Touch ID. Yeah. We can do it well.
You get to the desktop. You're at the desktop for a few seconds, and then this other screen pops up. I'm sure this screen is familiar to all of you, but you'll see it kind of presents this dialogue to the window or to the end user where it's kind of doing two things. One, it's giving them something to see and not interact with the desktop while all the apps that we want to manage are getting installed. When we get to the desktop, we'll see there's another dialogue in the background asking them to sign in with Platform SSO. I'll come back to you later. We'll see our doc there that's been configured. If we go into our users and groups, we'll see that we're actually a standard user, which is another issue with Intune. All accounts are created as admins, so we have a script running in the background to demote the end user. We're going to go through Platform SSO registration. We're going to talk about Platform SSO a little bit today, but not too much, just because with Tahoe around the macOS 26 Tahoe around the corner, a lot of this is hopefully going to be streamlined and implemented into Setup Assistant. So we won't have to have this process of nagging the end user to complete their Platform SSO registration. But if you keep your eye on the background, you'll see the dialogue disappear as soon as we have Platform SSO registered. And again, that's just something that we found was useful in terms of informing the user, hey, you got to actually do this registration. All right, so we got Platform SSO registered. We'll set up our passkey, and then we are good to go. Now that we're signed into Platform SSO, we'll open up a couple of Microsoft apps just to confirm that the SSO token is really there. You'll see Word opens, activates. We don't have to do anything. We go in there. We can confirm that, hey, we're really truly licensed. We'll open up Edge. We'll see that Edge is configured and requires a sign in. And when we go to sign in, we have to sign in with our account. And yes, it automatically signed us in. It'll do that for all the other Microsoft apps or Office resources. Next, we'll try and go through our applications. And hey, maybe we want to launch messages. Oh, wait, we're blocked. We can't do that. We'll go back to that a little bit later. Let's say, since we're a standard user, we want to make some changes on our Mac. We don't like Google Chrome. We're going to be using Microsoft Edge all day, so let's go ahead and trash that. We'll demote ourselves back to a standard user and just confirm that if we go and try and make a change, we are now back to being a standard user. Let's say we want to install some other apps. We'll go into the company portal. We'll briefly see here that we are compliant. And if we scroll to the bottom, we'll see that option for that recovery key. We're going to go ahead and install some other apps. We like Electrona Patch. If you don't know, it's a great tool to patch apps on your Mac. And Electrona Patch Desktop will install in a few seconds here through the company portal. Patch Desktop is a tool that you can use as a Mac admin to patch your apps. I think the last thing we're going to look at here after we close out company portal is to take a look at Microsoft Defender. This is just seamlessly appeared in our menu bar. It activated, it's turned on, and it's protecting our Mac. All right, so we looked at quite a few things there. So let's just back up for a minute and go back to the start and kind of cover things a little bit more closely. All right, I think we should stop right around here. All right, so let's talk about this window again. As I'm sure most of the folks in this room are aware, this is running Swift Dialog. If you're not familiar with Swift Dialog, it's a fantastic open source tool that allows you to create these beautiful dialog windows using Swift UI. It's very customizable, and we just have a script that is running in the background, and as soon as you hit the desktop, it throws up this dialog window. So again, like I mentioned earlier, we're doing two things with this. We're showing the end user the progress, and we're also preventing them from getting to the desktop until everything is done. Unlike, I don't think we're reinventing the wheel here. Other folks have similar scripts or similar workflows. One difference that we're doing here is that we are not actually installing any apps through the script. The script is just what we like to call like a verification script. It's just waiting for all these apps to be installed. It's just showing dialog to the end user. The only thing the script does is set the doc at the end of the script. Hand in hand with this, we're also kind of doing like an exercise with this. We're installing apps on the Mac. I think it's about 15 apps total. We're installing those 15 apps 5 different ways. You don't have to install all your apps 5 different ways. We're just kind of demoing that you have a lot of capabilities inside of Intune on how you want to install your apps. Some use cases make sense better than others, and we'll talk about that later. But the idea here is that you can do a lot of different ways to get all the apps that you require on your Mac. And I think about 15 minutes or so, or I think it's closer to 10 minutes, all your apps are installed for those 15 apps. All right, so let's get to it. So we have Electrona Patch. That's a product that we sell. And we are installing a number of apps through Electrona Patch onto the Mac. So first off, we're installing Swift Dialog itself. We're also installing things like Chrome, Edge, OneDrive, Teams, 1Password, Santa, and Zoom. You can use any other tool to install those apps. We like Electrona Patch. It works really well. As soon as it gets to the desktop, all those apps are getting installed. You can also use script-based methods to install your apps. So you can take a script, curl down your installer of choice, and install it through that script. So in this demo, we are installing Microsoft Office, Company Portal, because that, we'll come back to that later, and then Rosetta 2 is coming through a script. Like I mentioned earlier, You have built-in installers inside of Intune. We are using Defender as a built-in installer and installing it that way. And then you can also take your packages that you either create or get from a vendor and install those. In Intune, there's two methods you can do that. You can do what's called line of business or LOB. Those packages are installed through MDM commands, and they require the package to be signed and notarized. And so we are using LOB apps to install patch itself and also admin by request. You can also use unmanaged packages, and those are installed, or Intune calls them unmanaged packages, but they're the ones that are not unsigned, and those are installed through the MDM agent.
The convenience too with LOB here is that with patch being done that way, when we're at the remote management screen, since that's a required app, it's part of that await config ensures that patch is installed at that point, so we can ensure that much more quickly when we're at the desktop. The apps we want or need are getting installed that much more quickly.
And there is a fifth hidden method here that we don't show, and that's the VPP volume purchase program. You can also deploy apps that way. So going back to our checklist, we've covered a few things here, covered having a good onboarding experience and apps ready to use. Let's cover a few of the other items. So we talked about platform SSO. Again, I'm not going to go into too much detail here with this, but again, we just have a second script that runs after the first script finishes. That pops up another dialog window immediately after, reminding folks to sign in, because as is today in macOS, that notification appears out of your notification center and then can slide away or get easily dismissed by the end user. And you can't dismiss this other Swift dialog window until you've completed the registration. Once they complete it, it goes away. Like I mentioned earlier, you have your vanilla dock. You probably don't want folks launching Apple TV or Apple Music. You want them to use Teams. So again, we have our script that runs. At the end of it, it blows away that vanilla dock and sets up whatever apps that we want to have pre-configured for the end user. We're also purposefully doing this through a script so that later down the road, the end user can come through and change the dock if they want to. You could do it through a configuration profile, but then it's hard-coded and the user can't change it.
And Intune has some limitation in terms of how you can even determine if said apps are installed, and then the configuration profile to set the dock would come down. So there's a lot of chance you would end up pushing the dock profile, an app may not be there, and there's a lot of question marks left on your dock.
One other feature that a lot of other MDMs have is being able to restrict certain apps or binaries from running. Intune currently doesn't have that capability, so there's an open source product. Previously, it was from Google called Santa. Now it's spun off to its own company called, appropriately, North Pole. And it's very easy to manage and configure, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but you can restrict it from either running certain apps or even accessing certain directories. There's a lot of capabilities with Santa. Again, we like to empower our end users. So we strongly believe in them running users as standard users on their Mac, but then allowing them to elevate when they want to and to make changes on their Mac. So nothing new here. There's a lot of privilege elevation tools out there. SAP has their Privileges app. That's a great, fantastic open source tool. Jamf has their Jamf Connect functionality that allows you to elevate as well. One reason we like admin by request is it feels a little bit more enterprise ready. It integrates well into Microsoft Entra. We have it configured here in a very basic state where you can just click the icon and click yes to escalate to an admin. But typically, most environments where we set up, there's a form that you have to fill out. You send that form in. It actually waits for somebody on the service desk to review that request and then approve it. And then after that, you can initiate your remote session. When you have admin access, you have a clear countdown timer, and any changes that you make on your Mac during that time are tracked and logged. So example, on the console, you can see a historic view of all the times I've escalated and elevated to an admin, and we can zoom in here and see when we took Google Chrome off. Again, we talked briefly about Company Portal. So here is where you can make apps available for end users to install or reinstall on their Mac if they uninstall them for any reason. One change, again, from our talk last year is now you can take unmanaged apps, the ones that are not signed, and make them available in the company portal. And that's handy for a number of reasons, which we'll talk about a little bit later. All right, so we can check a few more things off our checklist, slowly work towards the bottom. And let's cover all the things you didn't see. I'm sure a lot of folks in this room know there's a lot of work that goes into making things in macOS go away and invisible to the end user. So there's things like extra setup assistant panes. In the last few versions of macOS, there's been this new welcome screen at the end of setup assistant. There's the prompt to, do you really want to turn on automatic updates for your Mac? Those aren't currently configurable inside of Intune, so we have a configuration profile to suppress those. You also, obviously, any app that has login items, you'll get those notification prompts. We want to suppress those. Same thing with any app that you open. Do you really want to get notifications for Teams? Yes, just allow that. So the end user doesn't have to prompt that. Then tools like Defender or Santa have system extension and PPPC permission requests that you need to allow for the end user. And again, that's all the work that you go into to making it seamless for the end user. So just using Defender as an example, I have 4 different configuration profiles here showing all the work that went into making Defender a seamless experience. And it's actually, I think, 6 configuration profiles total, because we also have a notification and a manage login items configuration profile. So again, it's work, but the end benefit is that it's really seamless for the end user, and it makes that onboarding experience really smooth. And I think the last thing we want to highlight is just securing your Macs. So by default, Intune has a compliance section. It's not fully featured, I would say. You can require...
It's limited.
It's limited, yes. You can require passcode. You can make sure they have the latest version of macOS. There's not too much you can do beyond that. You can also, leverage configuration profiles and deploying your own restrictions profile. That works well, but sometimes it's not a great idea to go through and just check the boxes of what you want to allow or not allow. So that's where we turn to a tool like the macOS Security Compliance Project. So if you're not familiar with this is a great open source resource managed by NIST and several other federal government agencies. And they allow you to create custom baselines around a set of standard security benchmarks. And it's a great product and allows you to create this guidance that you can then ingest into your MDM. So this could absolutely be its own talk at Mac Admins PSU. So we're just going to go really quickly and really briefly over how we do this for our end users when managing Macs with Intune, and kind of go over how we deploy MSCP. So the first step is to not use MSCP. MSCP is a great product, but it is entirely Python-based. You have to go through terminal, and it's both intimidating and can be frustrating if as you're working your way through like hundreds of rules and you make one mistake, you got to go all the way back to the beginning and start over again. So several years ago, folks at Jamf put together the Jamf Compliance Editor, which takes all of MSCP and just gives it a GUI front end. It says Jamf. You can take everything that's created there and take it into any MDM. It's not Jamf specific. So you can go through the process, build out your own custom baseline. I think on that demo, we were looking at CIS level 1. When you choose all your options, create your rules, set all your things, you get a build folder. And this build folder has a number of things. It has a compliance script. It has configuration profiles that you can upload into your MDM. And it has some other extra scripts inside of this special Jamf Pro folder. So what we like to do is take that first compliance script and package it up using our favorite packaging tool and put it into Intune, and then deploy it out to your fleet and usually put it somewhere on the Mac. Like for example, we put it in the library application support folder. You take all those configuration profiles, you upload them into Intune, and you take inside that Jamf Pro folder, there's a few scripts that are meant for extension attributes in Jamf, which if you're not familiar with that, but they're just short scripts that run every time the computer checks in and gives user information from the Mac into Jamf. And those scripts for this purpose are basically getting the results of the compliance script, when you run an audit and a check. So that first compliance script that we uploaded, it's just sitting on the Mac. So from the Intune side, what we do is we run daily compliance script, basically. It checks to make sure that script has been laid down and installed, and then we just run that again, and we just do an audit on the Mac and do and fix any errors, because it not only checks that your Mac is adhering to the rules that you establish in your baseline, but also enforcing and setting up any rules that can't be managed through a configuration profile. And then lastly, you can review those custom attributes. So you can take those extension attributes that are intended for Jamf, you can copy and paste them straight into Intune, no changes needed, and they come through as custom attributes and to review the results on your endpoints. So again, this could be a much longer talk to fly through, so if you have questions about it, we're happy to talk about it more, but this is how we do MSCP with Intune. All right, and with that, we have reached the end of our checklist, and we hopefully have a good enrollment experience for our end users.
So another thing we wanted to kind of cover with what Intune needs a little help with is around app management. That's one thing personally for me that just frustrates me a bit with the native ways that Intune allows and deals with package management and app updates overall. Natively, you have 5 different options for installing apps. Via Intune, you can do line of business, which we discussed earlier, the built-in installers for Office, Defender, and Edge. You have the volume purchase program. You can leverage scripts to call and curl down packages from either the vendors themselves or if you host it elsewhere for version control, as well as the macOS app package or DMG, which is unmanaged, but does allow the most flexibility. We'll go into those a little bit more detail later. In addition to that, there are third-party tools that allow you to deploy apps and manage updates as well. Those include Auto Package, Installator, Monkey, Intune Brew, which is newer and again is kind of dealing more with that Graph API development as users or admins are starting to see the features that are provided through the API and wrapping tools around them to kind of better help the admins themselves, as well as our own tool, Electrona Patch. Raise of hands here. Who in the room is currently using Intune?
Awesome.
Oh, okay. Of those who are using Intune, who is using native Intune package options? Just the 4 options or 5 options we listed before. A few of those. Okay. How about scripts? All right. Who's using open source products? And anyone using paid products? Not Electrona people. All right. Awesome. So Sam and I were kind of wondering this prior to this talk, so we kind of reached out to the community. There's 2 different areas that we see a lot of feedback for managing Macs with Intune, and that is the LinkedIn Microsoft Mac Admins group. It's a private group on there. You're welcome to request to join and such. So we posted a poll to that LinkedIn group. LinkedIn is limited in terms of polls that you can create, so you only get 4 options to provide them. So we kind of took that, put it into a pie chart to kind of better represent it. But again, it seemed like a lot of the individuals who were managing Macs and reporting into that group, a lot are leveraging just standard Intune methods to deploy. But we had a lot of reports of users referencing open source tools as well. We also reached out to the Mac Admin Slack group. There's a Microsoft Intune channel there that we were hoping to get good feedback from. There we were able to get much more granular in terms of what we wanted to find out with what people were using. We had a lot of great feedback and results come through to there. But again, we still found the majority of users are using those built-in 5 methods from Microsoft directly, with others using open source tools, scripts, a lot of variation throughout there. If we combine that just into the 4 minimal sections that we had, again, it's about 42% of individuals using Microsoft's built-in methods, which is great. I don't know how you deal with it. It just frustrates me beyond enough just to be able to get reporting and know that my app versions are correct when I need updates done. But then a lot of open source tools being used as well, which is great to see, and knowing that the community is able to leverage open source stuff, implement it within Intune, and see good results with it. So let's look at each of the installation methods. So Sam showed the different processes that we were doing with that script that kind of showed the process, like giving the user feedback. Again, Intune's doing all of that on the back end. It's not the script itself. So we kind of want to look at the different installation methods that we went through. So again, we had a line of business app. We have the Office Suite, Defender, and Edge, which are using the built-in Microsoft methods, as well as the volume purchase program. And again, the 3 are highlighted here that are using built-in methods. We'll come back to Microsoft Office. That's actually what's being distributed through self-service from a user perspective, just as user enablement. The way that we actually installed it from the
in the demo.
And the demo is actually being done via script, and we'll kind of dive into that and why here in a bit. So first, we'll look at the Office suite. So this is the app that's just coming directly from Microsoft. This is kind of one of the issues why we don't install it this way. There's limited controls as to what you can do here. As you can see, there's only 4 or 5 fields that you can provide information. And this is information that may provide feedback to the user from company portal. Otherwise, you can't tell it not to install Outlook if for some reason you're a Microsoft shop using Gmail, or if you don't want them to use Excel because Numbers is a much better accounting product. There's no control. You pretty much just get all the Office suite. You may also notice that it doesn't even tell you what Microsoft Office 365 apps are being installed. It doesn't necessarily clarify if it's the business suite or just the standard where you don't get, I think it's Teams and Defender, the Defender stub or not.
Yep.
It's
Defender
just
stub.
Microsoft 365 apps. Next, we'll look at the volume purchase program, how it lists within Intune and any kind of options you have there. Again, it's a little bit more restricted. There's not as much customization you can do with it, but again, that's all gate-kept by Apple and what they provide within the App Store. One convenient thing that you can see within the distribution of a VPP app within there is actually the licenses and license count used. So you're able to go in there and actually report and see if you need to grab more licenses in ABM or Apple School Manager and adjust that for any kind of distribution for it. Next, we will look at the line of business app. Again, Sam had mentioned this was admin by request that we were installing. Here you get a lot more options with how you deal with the installation of it. Again, this package has to be signed and notarized in order for it to be considered a line of business app. So a lot of times when you're rebuilding a package and customizing it, usually you can sign it, but notarization takes a few more steps. So these are typically apps directly from the vendor that you're taking and uploading into Intune itself. There's 3 key areas, though, to kind of keep an eye on for distributing these within Intune. That is the ignore app version, install as managed, and the app bundle IDs that are detected. The ignore app version, basically, if yes isn't selected, it's going to attempt to reinstall that if it doesn't meet the specific app bundle ID info. So basically, anytime Intune runs, it detects and sees if this app's installed. It can have difficulty actually understanding the app bundle ID and knowing if the version is correct, and will try to attempt to just reinstall itself over the top again and again and again for each subsequent app check-in. The install as managed is, again, this is a line of business, so it'll install the app as managed. So when the device becomes unmanaged, when this is set, it'll uninstall the app if you so determined it to. And the app bundle ID, admin by request is a good example because Intune will only detect once it's uploaded a single app bundle ID. There are other apps that 10, 15, 20 app bundle IDs will detect depending on the other processes that are added into the app itself. That can be really cumbersome in terms of actually determining if the app installed and updated correctly because the version numbers of those subsequent bundle IDs could be different. But when you update the app package itself and maybe the main app updated, but the bundle ID or version string for that didn't update, it can kind of get confusing with detecting that. Intune does allow you to modify this by actually deleting items that you don't want it to validate against. So those that have a long list of things, if there's the primary app that you know is the main bundle ID that you're wanting to detect, go ahead and delete the rest of those and just have it detect that one single bundle ID so you can validate and know that it was installed correctly. There's one that we did not install, but it's probably the best one to leverage, and that is the macOS app package. This is the unmanaged version. What's convenient here is that you can actually create your own pre- and post-install scripts. So here, this is installing Sentinel-1. Sentinel-1, I know we have Defender, but we want to talk about all the products in case Defender's not your only EDR tool. So for Sentinel-1, it needs to lay down a package, but there's actions that need to be taken thereafter. And so say that you don't want to create a single package, create a post-install within it itself, you just want to use the default vendor package, and then you want to install it and license it correctly. With the macOS app package, you can create a post-install script for once the package is laid down to actually call it, set for this particular instance the license ID for it, so it'll actually go through and register to the correct console and have it install correctly. Some of what's being done here is Microsoft seems to hint that it's going to be happening for line of business, and instead of having the app bundle ID, there are going to be post-package install verification scripts that can run that actually allow you to validate the apps are installed correctly or not, as opposed to just the bundle ID. So some of what you're seeing here, seems like it's going to be soon, maybe at some point, coming to line of business as well. So that kind of covers all the app installation methods with the native Intune processes. One thing we want to look at here is the scripted install. So this is how we were installing Office. And as we kind of mentioned before, the built-in native Office or built-in native Intune methods for Office are limited in terms of what you can control. So we want to be able to set specific apps that install during the time that we call it, mostly because Teams, when you install it with the default method, Teams wants to launch automatically, request microphone access, and not allow any kind of control over it. So we don't want to use that method. So we go with the scripted approach. Here, there's the primary section where we're setting an array of which apps we do and don't want to install. Intune is limited in terms of the view window that you can see here. So this is just a full screen capture. That window, you can't modify it there. You can't edit anything. You have to edit that externally. And the window here is just way too small. So let's look at the script overall. Again, it makes sense that it's pretty small. That's a lot to read through. There's one main section, though, that we're modifying here to make sure that what we want to install is what's being installed. And that's just setting an install app choice to 0 or 1 that it'll read later whenever it's running through the install package to make sure that it's installing what we do and do not want. So again, in this instance, it was Teams because we want to install that via patch because we can control how the app opens thereafter. And OneDrive, I think we just put it in there as another example. But another item we want to look at within the scripts is the enrollment app verification script. So again, Sam kind of showed the example of it, but we wanted to look at it a little bit more detail for what we were doing to set within there. Here, we'll look back into the script process. Again, it's a limited window. You can't edit within here. So let's look at the script externally. It looks like there's a lot going on there. There's actually only 2 main sections that need to actually be modified for anything in here. We'll have a link at the end of this that actually links to this exact script that you can take and implement with your environment if you want something simple to present to a user for app verification. The 2 main areas, though, here are this section here, which is where we specify the apps we want added to the dock. So again, the app verification script is not calling anything from Intune, but we do want to modify the dock because we want to make sure all the apps are installed and then set the dock so we don't have a bunch of question marks. And then further down, there's another array that looks very similar to other Swift dialog tools that'll actually present the user with feedback, give them installation status and such. But here you'll specify the application title. You can point it to an icon, whether it be cloud hosted or if you stored it locally with a package earlier on. And that's pretty much the only 2 sections that need to be modified for this to point and tell it what you're looking to be installed and the icon and what you want to use. Let's look next at configuration profiles on the backside of Intune. Again, we were using Electronic Patch to install a lot of the items. It's convenient, especially for us. We develop it, manage it and such, but there's a very simple convenience with it in terms of managing apps within Intune. Patch is managed via configuration profile, and there's a specific key that you can set in there called installer update. So with Patch being a line of business app, we can install it during the remote management screen. We don't have to wait till we're at the desktop. We know what's already there. Patch will run whenever it's at the desktop and determine any of the apps that are installed. And with this specific array of installer update, it'll detect if these apps are installed. It'll check and make sure they're up to date, and if they're not installed, it'll just install them automatically. So there's nothing to configure for you to add a package, adjust a script. You just set a configuration profile for the apps that you always want to have installed and just push it at that given time. Outside of that, I kind of want to cover more on the configuration profile side with the 3 different options that are available to you. There's the settings catalog that Sam had covered earlier that we'll kind of go into a little bit more showings with. There's a custom option as well as a preference file. Custom and preference file are kind of the same, but kind of different. We'll look at those a little bit closer. So all 3 of these profiles are managing or setting the managed login items. So these are things that we want to just have a pop-up in the top right and don't want to let the user approve or deny it. We want to just say your organization has added managed login items. So this here is the, I already clicked space, hold on, back. This section here is using the preference file. This is the preference file. What you'll notice here is you set the bundle ID for the app, but the contents of it only contain the key value pairs. It doesn't look like your standard plist where you have your PLS tag, XML, and all the other content underneath it. You only provide the key value pairs underneath there. It's kind of convenient because it's pretty limited in terms of what you add. However, you can't edit it here within the console. You have to have this plist saved locally, and it has to only be the key value pairs. You can edit it locally and then upload it back into Intune for any kind of changes. That's frustrating. Nobody really wants to do that. So this is the custom profile. So this is actually looking at a mobile config. This looks like what you would expect. This is something you could build in iMazing, or if you're migrating from Jamf or any other MDM to Intune, you can export the profile, unsign it. It'll be in this kind of same format, and you can upload it directly into Intune. It'll read it and manage those things as needed. You don't have to add a bundle ID or anything. It's just the mobile config itself added directly into Intune. Again, this is not, you cannot modify it within the console, so you'll still have to have that mobile config locally, make any changes to it, and then upload it back for it to make any changes. That's frustrating. You're having to get out of there, go into a text editor, make your changes, and go back into Intune. So we'll look back more at what Sam was talking about with the settings catalog. So the convenience here, again, all this is just a manage login item profile, but the 3 different ways to do it. First 2 require editing outside, but this allows you to modify the payload within Intune. Simple drop boxes. You can see clearly what the app is, what you're setting, and what you're setting as with the bundle identifier or the team identifier underneath it. So it's the same profile, just 3 different ways, but we wanted to make sure that the room understood that there's more than one way to skin a cat with Intune. Typically, as long as Intune supports it with the app catalog, then this is kind of the way to go through with it. Next, we'll look at app restrictions. Other MDMs, specifically Jamf, have restricted software records, so it's easy to go in and add a process or an app title to go through and block or restrict an app that you may not want to run or control and just not have the user be able to access it. Intune is limited in terms of what you can do for that type of control. So we leverage, as Sam had mentioned, tool Santa. It's open source, free to use, and actually very, hopefully we don't lose power, very scalable to other solutions or other ways that you may manage devices. So here we're looking to restrict the use of I think that was FaceTime.
Yep.
Again, we didn't want to remove it. It's a standard Mac OS app, so we left it on there. The user tries to click on it. Santa comes up, notifies the end user. They're aware of what's happening, so that's not like you're killing the process and it's going to bounce on the dock and then quit, and they're going to try to open it again. It bounces and it quits. That's going to generate a service desk call, and all they're going to have to tell them is, oh, that's not an allowed app. You can't use that. So instead, you can leverage Sanset to actually provide them feedback to know that, hey, this app is restricted. This is what's happening. You can contact if you need to. Otherwise, click OK to dismiss. To manage Santa is super simple. It's managed via configuration profile. It's easily scalable out through like other solutions with it. But the primary section here that we set is just the static rules. And here down at the bottom, there's other apps that we were restricting. This is just the one that we took directly from there. But you can see where books, FaceTime, and messages are the apps that are restricted and easy to go through and add any kind of bundle ID that you want to be able to restrict, push that out. Everything within Santa is customizable. So the messages that you see there, the icon that's shown to the user, all can be kind of company branded. So the user feels aware with what they're clicking and interacting with. They can know who to contact if they need an exception, so on and so forth. The last thing we want to talk about that Intune needs help with is reporting. So again, we talked earlier where there are some improvements in terms of where the information stored within Intune was only updated about once a week. That has improved to every 8 hours for that information to update. They do now supply the option for custom attributes. Again, as Sam had mentioned, it's very similar to the extension attributes within Jamf Pro. The only exception is that with Jamf, you have a results tag around it. With this, you can just echo out the actual result, and the last line is what will report back to it. Microsoft provides dozens of sample scripts to kind of build and scale this out for what you can actually implement and check against, because it's great as a resource to be able to report, maybe from a compliance perspective with what Sam was showing earlier, how he wanted to validate and see how compliant his device was and what it may have failed. You can have that report back as a custom attribute. These execute every 8 hours. So this is kicked off by the Intune MDM agent locally on the device. And every 8 hours, that'll be scheduled to run, and it'll update and report that information back into Intune. The problem with this is viewable globally. It's not something that you can view in the actual device record. So what would make sense, at least to me, is I would click on my device, click on the custom attributes section, and be able to review that information to report on that specific device. Unfortunately, this is a global, so you'll actually have to go and click on the custom attributes section within devices, and you can actually view the list of all the devices that it's ran against for a specific attribute, and then you can narrow it down by like a device name or what you may want to look for reporting on it. In terms of how those look within Intune, these are kind of 4 that we'd built out. I think we actually added a few more while we were trying to work on the talk. But the main one we want to look at here is something more pertinent for the community, is the Defender running status. So it's one thing to check and know if Defender's installed. You can kind of check that in resources and see if the app exists. But we want to know, is Defender installed and is it running on the endpoint? So this is actually a custom attribute from Microsoft. We took this directly from their page, added it into Intune, and it's actually looking for just 3 main processes that Microsoft identifies as the primary items for Defender to run. So it'll go through, run the script, check and verify that these 3 processes are running, and if it reports back correctly, we'll be able to go and view the global information and look to see that Defender is running on the endpoint. Again, it's done much better in terms of reporting. There's pieces around this, and something I'm about to talk with as well, that Microsoft is kind of putting writing on the wall that will become actionable items, but currently these are only available from a reporting standpoint. There's no action that can be taken based on the result of these. I wanted to showcase this in this format of how huge it is. This is the Resource Explorer, so this is somewhat new to Intune. Apparently, this information had always been gathered and stored by Microsoft, but had not been presented to anyone in the Intune console. They recently started to add this information through the Resource Explorer. You get a pretty broad overview, all the items on the right-hand column, you can kind of sort through. You can see, though, that some of the information is a little rough. For me, I don't want to count in bytes. I don't want to count up to billions. But that's what we have available to check and see what my disk space is on my Mac is built out in billions of bytes. Again, it's not actionable, but you can actually go through and view reported information on the device. We can look a little bit further and look at the device info, or this is OS info here, so we can actually go through and see the build, the major version, the minor version, when it was last updated. Again, the hope and writing on the wall from Microsoft seems to be that this information will become actionable. I think that they're just trying to determine how best to store the information, build out the reporting, and determine what the action will be on it. But for right now, it's just stuff you can look at. After all that, let's talk about how to get you to migrate to Intune after all of this.
Yeah. So let's wrap this up. But I saw a number of folks in here are already on Intune. That's cool to see. I'm sure some of you folks are probably in this position. This is a meme that we had in our talk last year. We enjoyed it so much we wanted to bring it back this year. So actually migrating, it's nothing too exciting. All it really involves is a lot of planning. So this is just, if you're in that position where your company is looking to move to Intune, we really encourage you to go through these steps, and starting off with reviewing all of your current workflows. And this is just a chance to, Intune's a new MDM, new platform, go through your current workflows. That includes your enrollment process, all the apps you're deploying, talk to your security team, find out these 5 security tools you're pushing really actually still need to be installed on all your Macs, and take the opportunity to kind of re-architect some of those workflows. My connection's lost. Thank you. Next step is to go through and design that out in Intune. It's a fresh MDM, go through, take those same workflows, build them out in Intune, obviously within the confines of what you can and cannot do in Intune, but use that opportunity to modernize your approaches.
I think number 2 for me always feels key, because designing within Intune is different from other MDMs. There's other things to account for, especially in terms of the reporting and having the feedback to know what you have managed correctly or need to make modifications to. But dealing with the designing within Intune is kind of key in terms of like preparing for that migration and knowing what you need to set and make that experience as seamless as possible for the end user.
And then after you've got Intune ready to go, we really encourage you to get test users enrolled and migrated quickly. Not IT folks who might check one thing that they're responsible for and then put the Mac away and not touch it again, but get actual end users involved and migrated over onto Intune, because they're the ones who are going to pick up the phone and call you or email you and chat you. So if you have this process where you get folks migrated quickly, get that feedback loop in where they tell you something's wrong, you fix it, they're happy, they might tell you more feedback, and you can quickly figure out all the issues that you might have with your configuration and have a successful platform for the rest of the company to move over to. And then while you're doing all of that, we really encourage you to build up your documentation, including troubleshooting steps for anything that might be new in terms of what your previous MDM was in Intune, and help define that for both your end users and your service desk folks. Thank you. And then lastly is to actually migrate. With Tahoe, you can use Apple Business Manager or Apple School Manager to do what's an in-place migration and have more of a seamless migration experience. Previously, you could do this through some terminal commands, but there are some drawbacks to that, and it's also maybe not always a preferable choice. So optionally, you can encourage folks to back up their data, then wipe the Mac and have them go through the enrollment process and re-enroll into Intune. The obvious drawback with that is they might lose data and they have to reconfigure their apps. Slightly better is you can give them a brand new Mac. They'll be happy about that, but those same other drawbacks about potentially losing data or having to configure their apps again is still there. And also on your side, you have the little bit of a headache of tracking all those old Macs back and getting them back from the end user. But that is it in terms of what is involved with migrating, from your current MDM into Intune. And again, I think this comes back to really taking the chance and the opportunity to build out this new environment, architect it as well as you can, and then get end users enrolled early and often.
It's me.
We are sponsoring at PSU this year. We have a booth downstairs. We're happy to talk and have questions there if you want to. If you don't have a chance to have a question here, but like Andrew mentioned, we have the slide deck here and the scripts that we showed off also on this link. And also, if you can take a moment to go through the feedback link that's shown there and leave feedback on the talk, we would appreciate that as well.
But for that, questions, answers? We'll open it up to the group. I will throw this thing happily, so protect your coffee.
Oh.
Not that one. Sorry, man.
So for running scripts in Intune, does it define a script as anything with the shebang or anything that ends in .sh?
The question was, I don't know if that was working, but he asked for scripts running with an Intune, will it run anything like with .shell or with a shebang or any kind of option thereafter? I believe the scripts with an Intune, like that specific section is only for shell scripts, I believe.
Yeah.
Okay, but so here's the thing, how is it defining a shell script? Because if it's with .sh, you can run Apple scripts with the OSA script shebang with the .sh. You can do the same thing for PowerShell. If it's by the shebang, then the extension doesn't matter, and it's just whatever you happen to put in for the shebang so it knows what interpreter to use.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I've ever experimented with trying to do anything. Typically, we just run either standard bash or Z-shell scripts.
I'm not 100% sure there. Sorry. Anyone else? Way back in the back. I'll defer to you on throwing or not.
Excuse me.
Better solution. Okay. Are we live?
Is there a switch on that? I'm not sure.
I don't know.
It doesn't. Okay.
Things happening yet? I'm aiming this towards myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Holy smokes. All right. About device migrations. You mentioned, of course, when you're refreshing hardware, great, low impact, but spending money.
Yep.
Wiping, not super convenient. Does that mean that there's no accepted or approved way to get devices in just via an enrollment profile. Like we kick the devices out of Jamf, just do Jamf remove framework, we get the MDM profile off, we now have an unsupervised device. Can we just enroll them with or without what's called the user context, whatever it is?
As long as they're enrolled in Apple Business Manager or Apple School Manager, you would technically be able to reassign them to the new MDM. And if it's on macOS Sequoia, you can technically have even a standard user run the profiles renew type enrollment. It would then reach out to the servers. You would technically have to kick it off of Jamf first because it won't allow it to have multiple profiles on it. But as soon as that profile is removed and that command is ran, again, if you have admins, you can have them run in a sudo, but it allows it to be a standard user as well. That would then initiate a talk to ABM, see the servers that it's assigned to, and pull down the new management profile and have it as supervised within Intune itself as well.
Okay, so that is a no for, I've got a Mac that is sitting here that has no MDM on it. I cannot just grab a .mobile config and install it, or I can't drop company portal on there, right, and sign in that way.
You could, yes, but it would register the device as a user-initiated enrollment through that process.
Okay.
Now, with company portal sign-in,
It'd still be a BYOD. It would not come in as an automated device enrollment.
Okay. Well, yeah.
But I mean, it's not, if that device is in Apple Business Manager or Apple School Manager, it's not hard to have a workflow where that profiles renew type enrollment command is run. And then it's user driven, but you get the full screen experience where you click through and enroll the device. That's what we do for some of these type of requests that we work on.
Okay, cool.
any other questions? Anyone? Someone had you, Damien, you had your hand up earlier. Okay.
Okay. All right.
All right. Well, thank you all for coming. If you have any questions later on or you want to talk with us, we have a booth downstairs. So if there's any questions you have come up in the meantime, happy to talk about it. Thank you all.
Okay.